But first, the company that operated Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant has admitted for the first time that it played down safety concerns before the March 2011 disaster. The admission is a major reversal for the company TEPCO, which had defended its preparedness following the disaster. In a report released by the company, it found that when looking back on the accident, the problem was that preparations were not made in advance. It feared that if tsunami risk studies were disclosed, that it would lead to immediate plant shutdown, and there was concern that if new severe accident measures were implemented, it could spread concern in the siting community that there is a problem with the safety of current plans. Justin Dargin is a nuclear energy analyst and an energy and geopolitics scholar at Oxford University. He's joining us from London. Why this sudden admission, this reversal?
Well, I think this comes on the back of actually several issues. One is that recently about 90% of the Japanese populace have indicated that they are against nuclear energy in Japan. And in addition to that, there is the popular perception as well that there was too much of a cozy relationship or collusion between the plant operators and also the regulators, which enabled this type of lax environment to arise whereby the disaster occurred. So I think that what we see with this recent admission is really nothing more than TEPCO just acknowledging what is now conventional wisdom within Japan. Although I think taken into Japanese context, this is still a fairly significant development.
How compelling, though, is the evidence that there was, in fact, collusion between the company and government regulators to allow what is being described as lax safety supervision to avoid the financial and regulatory costs?
Yes, well, basically what we see is that the previous environment in Japan more or less allowed the plant operators to implement regulations as they saw fit, even if the regulators said that this is something that needs to be done. And the regulators, of course, they did not necessarily have the power to enforce these decisions. So we see that with the new regulations that have been passed and laws that are being formed and promulgated at the moment, is that the plant operators are no longer have that space to be able to do as they like. Now they're going to have to follow the regulations which are set forth by the nuclear regulatory body in Japan.
And it does seem like some significant backtracking on the part of the company, because it had once argued that tsunami could not have been predicted or anticipated and that it did the best it could. I wonder what kind of impact its admission might now have on the ongoing debate in Japan over nuclear energy.
Well, what we see in Japan right now over nuclear energy is we see a push and pull dynamic that's in place. We see that the majority of the public is now officially, we can say, against having nuclear energy going forward. However, at the same time, even though the government has created a type of, let's say, plan to make Japan nuclear free by about 2040, there has been pushback by the business community, whereby the business community states that Japan will lose its economic competitiveness if it does engage in this plan. And also certain, let's say, governmental bodies have stated that if Japan increases its dependence on fossil fuels as it transitions away from nuclear energy, that it wouldn't be able to meet its carbon and climate and environmental goals as well going forward. So now the government has stated that 2040 is merely a target and that it's not necessarily going to be zero nuclear energy by that date, but it's more or less an aspirational goal. So that's how we see it playing out at the moment. But at the same time, let's say in deference to public opinion, the Japanese government has created fairly stiff safety regulations in place. And just an example or two, now if there are active seismic, if one of the nuclear plants is in an seismically active area, then the plant has to be shut down, for instance. There have to be evacuation procedures that are in place for the surrounding towns, and also other safety regulations that are fairly robust. So we can see this push and pull dynamic, and we can see that on one hand the government realizes that economically it will be difficult to transition fully away from nuclear energy, but on the other hand there is a fair amount of public anger that it has to deal with.
Justin Dargin joining us from London. Thank you very much.
Thank you.